This is my first time doing one of these, so it's going to be scuffed to all living hell. But hey, gotta start somewhere. And that somewhere is going to be Virtual Riot's new LP/album, whatever you want to call it, Simulation. After not having a true full-length album before, I was really excited when I heard about this project, and let me tell you, it did not disappoint. After thinking about how I wanted to do my album reviews, I decided on a slightly unorthodox approach to it. I don't feel like building up to a big climax or anything, so what I'm going to do is basically the opposite of what usually happens. No more waiting for what you came here for. We're going to start with the overall rating first, for those who just came here to see the epic number, and then details about the album for those who want to stick around will come after. So with that being said, Simulation was a big success for me, and I'm feeling a strong 8 out of 10. Before getting into those specific details, I just want to give some brief thoughts about the album. I really enjoyed the feel of the album and was honestly pleasantly surprised. For me, Virtual Riot has always had extremely good production, but was always bogged down by really bad ad-libs and questionably abstract sound design sometimes. Like, don't get me wrong, I love abstract, but I have yet to hear it really hit home in dubstep. Some of his previous tracks, like Wallmonger for example, highlight that issue with some drops that have like unrelated elements seemingly at random. The album had almost none of those issues, and it was fantastic hearing a more melodic and structured approach that I haven't heard from Virtual Riot since like his Still Kids EP. Anyway, I'll talk about the Pragmatic Score first. The album featured 16 tracks, those of which included an intro, an outro, some song transitions, and overall really solid pacing. Some of the highlights for me included the transition from log into simulation, which really set the tone of the album right from the get-go, and Virtual Riot's use of contrast between darker and lighter songs, such as going from So Sorry to Rewrite to Exile. You can really feel the intent behind the song placement and how it adds to the overall experience. As mentioned earlier, the album has a very distinct feel to it, with songs taking a melodic approach to dubstep throughout the album. The songs themselves all show large amounts of creativity and intensity, but they all manage to do so without feeling overbearing and confusing, which is very easy to do by accident. I know Virtual Riot has done some longer EPs in the past, like his Save Yourself EP, but I was still really shocked at just how well he handled the album structure. For the Pragmatic Score, I gave Simulation a pretty respectable 4 out of 5. With the boring objective portion out of the way, now I get to really dive into some of my more opinionated thoughts, which is the purpose of the Idealistic Score. Basically, this score just boils down to how much I like the songs at an individual level. So the album kicks off its track list with Login. There isn't really much to say about this track since it only serves as an opener, but it certainly does its job well in bringing the listener into the world they're about to explore. The big purpose of Login is to introduce you to the first actual track of the album, Simulation. When the track is named after the album title, it sets high expectations, and Simulation met those expectations within the first 15 seconds. This is the first taste you'll get of the sound design, and it really shocked me at just how bright and full it felt. I felt surrounded the entire time in the best way possible. The drops in the song weren't the craziest drops ever, but they both felt really fitting for the song, especially with how intricate yet clear the second drop was. The next track is Redline, and admittedly the song wasn't one of my favorites. I wasn't super sold on the introduction, and while the song afterwards was good by all means, I just felt a lack of emotion coming from it. For an album packed with songs as filling as it is, this song was noticeably dry and empty feeling for me personally. However, Virtual Riot immediately cleanses any doubts I had after Redline with Don't Worry. This is definitely one of the best tracks on the album for me, probably being my third or fourth favorite. I absolutely love the vocal hook, and the song is built around it really well. I especially want to point out the midsection before the second drop. I got goosebumps listening to the chord progression layered with the vocals. The juxtaposition between the two drops also worked really well, with the first drop being the drop to set the stage, but with a lack of distinct chords or key to it. And then the second drop mirrored the second half of the song by bringing in more of the melodic chords for added impact. The track next is Get Away, a song that features So Loki. His vocals and rap are incredibly catchy, especially in the chorus. I wasn't a huge fan of the song at first, but it's really grown on me over time. Track 6 is Chroma, which honestly I don't have much to say about. The 80s digital feel to it is pretty quirky, but the drops feel very standard, and overall it makes me graze over the song when I'm thinking about the album. So Sorry is the first song I heard from the album, and had it not popped up on my recommended, I probably wouldn't have even known the album existed until a month later, so good job So Sorry. For praise, that's really all I got. The first drop in the song is probably my least favorite in the entire album, with the vocal chops just not really working all that well for me. The song isn't bad by any means though, and it actually works really well from an album structure standpoint. Like I mentioned earlier, it breaks up some of the lighter songs to switch up the mood and keep the overall experience engaging. Past the first listen though, I don't really think I'll ever revisit this song anytime soon if I'm not just listening to the full album. And just like last time, a track I was not so fond about was immediately followed up by one of my favorites in the entire album. Rewrite is just impossible for me to dislike. It's such a feel-good song, and the flow is crazy good too. I would probably say that the 2 drops in this song are 2 of my favorite drops from Virtual Riot, like maybe ever. The mid-sections and build-ups are also crazy good, and all have enough variety that it never feels too repetitive. I enjoy the rest of the song just as much as I enjoy the drops, something that I always appreciate in dubstep music, which is surprisingly hard to find these days. Banger song. And here we have it, the moment none of you were waiting for, because I never mentioned anywhere that I was going to do this. So I bring to you the much anticipated award of Best Song in the Album, which goes to the next track, Exile. Congratulations, you did it, Exile. Mwah. Holy shit. The introduction of this song alone is enough to warrant the spot. The entire first minute is executed to a level that's completely just out of this world. For God's sake, like, I just listened to Rewrite, the happiest song in the album. I was not mentally prepared for this dystopian ass shit. And then we get into the actual song, like, oh my god, the percussion, dude. I have a huge boner for good percussion, and this song's main drum beat is just like absolutely sickening. And then it all climaxes 2.5 minutes in, with the dark feel that's been present the entire time, pairing with like the juiciest bass synth imaginable. The kids really nailed the vocals in this song as well. There's like nothing negative that I could say about this song. I would probably put this song in my top 100 of all time. I hope I get the pronunciation for this right. Tuhu Rhythm really reminds me of like a combination of Chroma and Redline, in the sense that it has that mid-2010s vibe with its sound design, and it has drops that take the more dry and gritty side of dubstep into effect. But at the end of the day, you combined 2 songs that I didn't really care for that much and created a mediocre sandwich. In all seriousness though, I would say that I prefer this song to the other 2 just due to how nasty some of the drops are. Fork Funeral offers a really good intro. The hook comes in completely isolated, and I think that the intended effect was nailed perfectly, but the drops didn't really do it for me. If I wanted a drop with percussion this direct, I think I would just go back and visit Hysteria. Okay, is it just me, or does Back in Time feel like something Porter Robinson would release? I don't know if it's the vocal structure of Angelica or the anime girl vocal chopped drop, or if it's the bright atmosphere throughout the entire song, but it just screams Porter to me. And I absolutely love Porter, so by association, this song slaps. The second drop really does wonders for me as well, and this is definitely a highlight track for me. The beginning of Dreaming sounds like something I would hear at a high school varsity soccer game during halftime, which is not exactly a good thing, but I did enjoy the first drop quite a bit. I also really liked the future garage elements in the second drop. Insides is one of my favorite Virtual Riot songs, so this should come to no surprise. The last drop is pretty okay, but it's not anything to write home about for me. I also wasn't a huge fan of the vocals or the mid-sections, which is really surprising because Virtual Riot usually has some of the best mid-sections in all of dubstep. But at the end of the day, this song was just essentially me waiting for the drops to happen. Neon Angel is a song that I find pretty underwhelming. I usually like drum and bass, but the drop almost felt undeserved in this song. The intro tries really hard to be dynamic, but I felt no emotion from it at all, so the drop coming in really did nothing for me. The second drop is a little better, but at that point it's 2 minutes in and the song is already cemented as one of the weaker tracks in the album for me. As the last full track of Simulation, This Could Be Us had a tall task behind it. It had to leave a strong impression in order to end the album with a bang, and I'd say it did a pretty decent job. Frank Zumo's, I think that's how you say it, vocals weren't super great for me, but the song definitely had the right atmosphere for an ending track. The instrumental felt full and the drops followed the can't go wrong structure of drop 1 being the hard-hitting dry drop and drop 2 being the more full melodic drop. Nothing insane, but it did its job. Lockout is just as you would expect it to be, the album closer. It serves as an outro with the same theme as the intro, which is a cool touch from an album design standpoint, but it's not a track that I'll be listening to on my own time. But I mean, like, it's not meant to be, so that's not really a bad thing. So the album receives an idealistic score of 4 out of 5 for me, with its highs being very high and its lows being not that bad. I don't think there's a single bad song on the album, with the only bad portion of any of the songs being the first drop and So Sorry. But even So Sorry had a high quality production and a meaningful intent for the album, so I can't be too harsh on it. And that's it. That's my review on Simulation. 4 out of 5 for the Pragmatic Score, and a 4 out of 5 on the Idealistic Score, for a grand total of 8 out of 10. This is one of, if not the best dubstep album I've ever listened to, and I highly recommend you check it out. That's all from me. Smooth outro.